Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'a sunnatahu ila yawmiddin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome again to another episode of your weekly Islamic chat show, Guest of the Week, coming to you from Sharjah Media Corporation. As always, I'm your host Ismail Bullock. And now, as we are in the month of Ramadan, we want to spend these next few episodes talking about Ramadan, talking about the benefits. And today we thought that we would discuss some ways or some tips or some different techniques, I guess we could say, or tips is the best thing to what we could say really here, on how to spend your Ramadan or how to get the most out of this Ramadan, inshallah. And to do that with me is brother Almir. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair for coming on.
Jazakallah khair for inviting me. Thanks.
And now obviously Ramadan, many of us, we experience it on a yearly basis, and many of us, we end up leaving Ramadan thinking we didn't really do what we should, we didn't make the most of it, we could have done better. So today, inshallah, we're going to kind of discuss some kind of tips for those during Ramadan.
Isn't it always that when Ramadan, when we start wherever we are, it seems like a sprint in the beginning, like, fast paced, and we all energetic, and it goes, fast start, and then towards the middle or the end, then it kind of slows down, right? You kind of see the masajid empty, you kind of seeing this. I mean, this is typical of what happens. I mean, it's human nature. But today we'll focus on looking at the whole picture of how one can maximize his or her Ramadan by doing some practical tips, right? Regarding eating habits, regarding how to plan your Ramadan, because we living in a fast-paced world with a fast-paced life, we find ourselves managing our time, you could say, not adequately. It's not really, we don't maximize our time. And inshallah today we'll talk about some of these tips and hints how to maximize our time and how to plan for the rest of Ramadan. And one of the things we always say is that just when the Ramadan starts, we have to get hyped up. I mean, for us, knowing about Ramadan, adults and all this, we already got hyped up months before, right? But when we talk about our children, we have to, we can't just be quiet about it and say, oh, Ramadan starts tomorrow. It's more like, get your children ready, and they should feel that the coming of Ramadan is an event to celebrate, and get them in the mood of doing Ramadan by doing a few things, right? These are some of the things we can look forward to. One of the major things that we always should focus on, and I think gets lost in translation, is in Ramadan, of course, besides fasting, we're talking about all the compulsory things. I mean, we're not going to go into too much detail about, we know what there is. You have to fast, those who are, of course, able. But, one of the things is we should not be missing Taraweeh prayers, for example. This is always, have a good start with Taraweeh, keep going, and continue.
I mean, what we find as well, just like you mentioned at the beginning, how a lot of people are energetic in the beginning and then they kind of waver off towards the end. What we also see is the opposite. We see some people, they're not energetic in the beginning and they just do hardly anything apart from fasting, and they just wait for the last 10 days, for example. So you find a lot of people who don't make any effort to go to Taraweeh, but they'll make an effort to spend all night in cafes drinking coffee and maybe having the hubbly bubbly or the
majlis that people organize their local
and they
area.
They will just chill out the whole night there, maybe watching movies even, but they'll say, but they won't make enough effort to even do the Taraweeh. So there's definitely definitely an issue as well.
But and that's the next point I'm trying to make, is you have to make a niyyah. What is your niyyah for Ramadan? Your niyyah is, of course, should be that you please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you are doing fasting, all the things that you're doing is that you please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, fasting is for Allah. So if you make that clear to yourself from the beginning, or if we have not done it yet, this is the time to do it, right? To clarify or to purify our intention. And we should remind ourselves what is Ramadan about in a nutshell. Is basically, of course, to please Allah, number one thing. Number two, and not to have those regrets like you mentioned earlier, is to have a productive month, right? So when you say productive, what does it mean productive? For example, I will discuss it in the second part, but what are some other points is to have inner peace. Ramadan brings peace. Isn't Ramadan always that people feel they're more charitable in Ramadan? They feel like giving more. And even some people, I mean, this is not the compulsory thing, but a lot of people, they choose to give their yearly zakah money in Ramadan because it's kind of easier to part with, or it's just easier to calculate. It's not a must. You can do it at the beginning. You can do it in Safar or Muharram, whichever month. But, you know, people choose to do Ramadan, which is fine. And of course, Ramadan is a month where you kind of do a reset button on everything. For example, one of the big things, of course, is your inner peace. You do inner peace for yourself. Secondly, and I think people don't realize this is very important, that you have to make sure that you forgive and forget about those who have harmed you, be it from your family, be it from your friends, be it from your acquaintances, from your colleagues at work. Kind of go back on that and reflect on those things. And of course, if you have harmed somebody, try to amend those things in this month.
I mean, and that's the thing, because we always see now people are always trying to they get involved in the whole new year of the Gregorian calendar, and they'll be saying like, oh, I have to make my New Year's resolution. So we don't need to look at that New Year resolutions. We have Ramadan to be a time to make resolution, like you said, firstly for yourself, to improve yourself, and like you said, use it as a time. Not even
a resolution. It's more like Ramadan is a place where it's a time that everybody's heart gets softer, right? It's a time where it's actually easier to do these things. And, you know, it's easy, like I said, to be charitable. It's easier to, I mean, I hate to make the statement, but sometimes, you know, you invite people to Ramadan that you don't see them whole year. Or people invite you. I mean, it's just what it is. It's okay. You know what I'm saying? But Ramadan bring these things, get people together and do things, you know, which is okay. So Ramadan is the month where you can do those things much easier than, let's say, outside. We're not saying is, oh, you should forgive people only Ramadan. So no, we're saying is, if you want to look for a real change, Ramadan is the time to make it, because it's much easier to start with something. And because just naturally you're doing more ibadah, you're fasting already, you're hungry, and then you remind yourself, why am I hungry? And then you remind yourself, yes, I'm hungry because I'm fasting, and I'm hungry because Allah asked me to do so, and I'm fasting for His sake. Already your mindset is totally different, right? Alhamdulillah, living in a Muslim country also is, you're reminded of that on a daily basis. You know, you're fasting, your friends are fasting, your colleagues are fasting, the canteen is closed at work and stuff like that. So you get constantly reminded in a way. So that whole environment, it brings that change that we can actually just latch onto and go with. And of course, month of Ramadan is a month of Laylatul Qadr, right? I mean, we always have to focus on that night, and we don't say it's one night, 27th or 25th or 29th, whichever. We say in the last 10 nights, most likely it is, and we should just focus on that. And mainly, and I think this is the one that gets lost for all of us, is that in the kitchen. We get lost in the kitchen. Why? We'll talk about this, inshallah. Why kitchen is important in Ramadan? I'm not saying to overcook or cook 15 type of meals. No, but we need to cook the right meals, eat the right foods. Because if we don't eat the right foods, we're not going to have the energy to sustain what we want to plan for. Because remember, we just talked about how to be productive, how to have a productive month. So you'll have to have, like, you know, steps of what you're going to be doing. So if you put all those things for yourself as in a planner, for example, you plan for it, yet it doesn't happen because maybe the energy levels are not there, maybe there's overeating issues, which we've all done in Ramadan. I mean, I'm talking about myself. And if you focus on that, how to have a nutritious Ramadan, right? Not a belly full type of Ramadan, then everything will become easier. Your energy levels will be higher, then ibadat will be plentiful, and you'll be able to be productive at work, productive at home with the children, and your Ramadan will be at the end you'll say, oh, that was not bad actually. I think my Ramadan this year, for example, was better than last year, or was better than years before, and so on. So we need to take advantage of this and plan, for example, for on a daily basis, what we are going to be doing. Have like parts of the day that we're going to be looking at. For example, you, of course, morning. Let's start with the morning. What's the most important thing in the morning of Ramadan is what? Of course, Fajr is there. But what happens before that? And I think lots of us forget to do that. And is to have suhoor. Suhoor is a must to have. I mean, yes, sometimes you oversleep, but at least you have an intention to wake up. But suhoor should be a part of, not just to have a small meal, but just to have a proper, nutritious meal to keep you for the rest of the day.
I mean, even from the perspective of Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that there is barakah in the suhoor, that you should.
Yes.
So the scholars say, even if you, for whatever reason, don't feel like eating, you should at least wake up at that time and have water or have dates or something, because there's blessing in this time of having the suhoor, this pre-fasting dawn meal.
Yes, and we'll talk about the food part itself, what to eat and what not to eat. But suhoor, then Fajr, of course, after Fajr, reciting Quran, doing istighfar if you have time, if you don't have to go work and stuff like that. So that's one part. The second part is the work part, where you have to go to work. We all do. So at work, it's just because we're fasting, it's not an excuse to be inefficient at work. We still have to do our work. Like I said, living in a Muslim country, alhamdulillah, our work hours are shortened. So we have more time to rest and more time to do ibadat. But in those hours, we should be more productive, or basically as productive as we are before Ramadan. So it doesn't also justify for one, because he's or she is hungry, to be ill-tempered and rude to his or her colleagues, and and also while in traffic. In Ramadan, we know that Ramadans are famous for certain congested traffic hours, and lots of patience is needed. So at that time, we get to be angry a little bit, but instead of express that anger in unfruitful ways, we should kind of scale back and maybe listen to some Quran, or do our adhkar, or ponder about things. Just kind of scale back, and this will bring about also your productivity level up, because when you do something bad, you feel bad, and you kind of get, man, that was bad, why did I do that? And then you're like kind of depressed in a way, and then the effort level is not there because of that. The motivation is
negative
less.
Impact on
negative
you,
impact on you. Yeah, for sure. And of course, the later part of the day when you come from work, then take a nap. It's okay, because you need energy, right? And of course, get ready for meals and so on, and have a little family halaqah or some discussion. Ramadan programs are there also to take a look, to see some reminders and stuff like that. And of course, breaking the fast. This is the most important part of and fruitful part, because we even know that just before iftar, because this is the hungriest, the thirstiest time of the day for a person who's fasting.
I'm just going to hold you on that point, and we'll come back to that after this short break. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back. Now, Brother Almir, just before we went to the break, we just started talking about the day, and we got to the time where we were mentioning, one of the most important times in Ramadan is breaking the fast, and that's why we went for the break.
Yes, breaking the fast, and we're going to be spending a little bit of time on this, how important it is, in what way to break the fast. Of course, before the fast itself, we mentioned, this is the time where a person is the hungriest, the thirstiest, and he or she is thinking is about food and that sip of water, or that juice, or the laban, or whatever, and my mouth already starts getting moist talking about it, but that's okay. Subhanallah. And then this is the time where a person should make dua, right? This is the time that the dua is acceptable. So we should take a moment just before the adhan, waiting for the adhan or the canon, as we hear here, to take time and ponder, make that dua for a few minutes. Once the iftar comes, of course, from sunnah is to have dates. And dates have proven, because dates have sugar in them, and it's an instant, you could say, glycemic lift that the body needs, because instant energy that's absorbed. And we should eat 1 or 3 or 5, odd number of dates, and have some water with it after that.
The thing is, we see so many people skipping that. We see people breaking the fast with like 5 samosas.
Oh my God.
Deeply fried samosas and pakora, or some of these really bad or jellies or custards.
Is it wrong for me to say, when you say those samosas come out in Taraweeh? It's like, think about it. They're very greasy.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about this. And subhanAllah. Anyway, oh man.
So definitely what we're basically trying to say is, of course,
I know you're
nothing wrong with samosas.
No.
In moderation.
Moderation.
But not breaking your fast with a plate of samosas.
But I've seen people buying 1 kilogram of samosas. There's places that sell it on the streets. 1 kilogram for a 3-4 member family. That's a lot of samosas to be eaten. Anyway, so dates. Hydration is very important, because the whole day is spent without fluids, and you need hydration. So drink plenty of water. Take your time. Don't drink too fast, of course. And this is the time when you do your prayer. So after prayer, you have a meal, right? Now, what do you drink? What do you eat? You mentioned already, I think, what not to eat. All the greasy foods. Greasy foods, first of all, are very hard to absorb. Takes time to digest them. And they're a high source of energy, unnecessary energy, because first of all, they give you some kind of indigestion in a way, right? And they're hard on the stomach, especially an empty stomach, right? So before you start, when you start eating food, the food is ready over there already. Like, everything is set on the table. It's not like you're going to go to the kitchen back and forth and get the food like you may do for lunch or other meals. Resist eating as fast as we are, hungry, if you want to say like that. So eat slower, right? And so have a conversation during iftar. For example, back home in my country, I don't know why they do this, but they say it's bad to talk during food. So people, when they eat food, they don't talk. The old generation I'm talking about. The newer one is a bit different. But that's wrong. From the sunnah is to talk, no? While you're eating food, is to have a conversation. And this helps by not overeating. Okay? So what do we need to avoid? You mentioned already greasy food, high fat to avoid, high sugar, highly processed wheat, such as white bread, right? And other foods. Definitely fried foods. Like you said, ghee, pakoras, biryani. We're not saying don't avoid rice, but there is a huge difference between white boiled rice and biryani or mandi rice, because it's soiling itself in oil and other things. And meanwhile, white boiled rice is just boiled in water. It's totally different. People don't realize that. People say rice is bad for you. No, we're not saying rice is bad for you. We're just saying there are certain types of rice that may be bad for you if you eat them, like a plateful, such as biryani, versus white rice. Totally different content, right? And of course, what is the most famous thing in Ramadan that people eat? We live in a Muslim country. What do you think? Not specific food, but what's famous? The sweets, right?
The sweets, like
the Ramadan sweets.
Jellies and custards and cream
like,
caramel.
I used to go to the shop next to me, this roastery place, and they have these, Palestinian, Shami kind of sweets, Syrian sweets. They're very tasty, very delicious. And I'm like, can I buy those? Like, it was like, not Ramadan. And they're like, no, Habibi, those are only for Ramadan. The biggest one, the tastiest one, the most sugar ones are only Ramadan. And Ramadan, they're full. And these are the types of things to avoid. I'm not saying avoid it fully, but have a little bit.
Yeah,
Right?
there has
Have
to
a
be
little
a
bit.
moderation.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm guilty of that, eating those cheese kind of croissant pies. What do you call those? I forget the name.
Kanafa.
Not even kunafa. Kunafa is always there.
Oh,
There's
I
a
know what you mean.
specific
The other
one
ones.
that's
Yes,
only
yes,
Ramadan.
Yes, yes. Looks like
And I was guilty in Ramadan, and I'm not shy to say, eating 4 or 5 of those. I mean, imagine 4 or 5. They're this big, and then gulping it with coffee or some orange juice or whatever. I mean, and they go for Taraweeh prayer and you feel so heavy, and then.
I mean, even looking at it from the Islamic perspective, I mean, our body is also an amana, isn't it? It's a trust given to us. So it's not like we cannot just do whatever we want to do with our body and eat whatever we want to eat. So we even have to look at it from that aspect. And even Islamically, if you're continuously eating unhealthily, that can quite easily be considered to be haram.
Yes.
You're doing something haram when you know you're eating every day fast food, every single day. And you've been going to the doctor's telling you that every time your cholesterol is increasing, and your fatty liver is getting worse and worse, but you just keep on eating.
Yes.
This becomes haram because you are causing yourself harm.
Yes.
And you're eating the worst kinds of foods.
Yes.
So we also have to look at it from that perspective.
And eating high sugar, high fat foods immediately and eating in high quantities, you're overloading the body. The body can't handle it because it was preserving energy whole day, and all of a sudden you just imagine like a car that's supposed to carry like a 500 kilogram of cargo, and you put a ton on it. It's gonna falter. It's gonna be heavy. It's gonna struggle, right? So same thing with the bodies. You have to take it easy, right? You can eat a large quantity of food, but not high sugar, high fat. You could eat like lots of vegetables, for example, right? And we're gonna get to that, but we're talking about the foods to avoid. So another type to avoid is salty foods. Famous in Ramadan, right? Salty foods are famous. They will cause, first of all, dehydration. Or if you want to have salty food, okay, I'm not saying don't have it, but have it maybe in iftar time, because I will have at least the whole night to rehydrate, right, before the suhoor. But a lot of people choose to have salty foods in suhoor. Imagine all those olives, the really salty ones, like the pickles and all these things, and they have it for suhoor. Ya akhi, the whole day you're thirsty, and you'll say, oh, this Ramadan is hard. Well, this Ramadan is hard because you made it hard for yourself. So this is one of the things that one can fix in order to get better. Meals that have, for example, slow release carbohydrates, will keep us energized for a night of ibadah, such as lots of fiber, like food with lots of fiber. Lots of fruits have high in fiber, lots of vegetables. For example, chickpeas are very good. Even potatoes, they have fiber and so on. So having those will keep us fuller and also give us energy for the rest of the evening. Of course, hydrated salads, fruits, vegetables are excellent replacements for what? For oily curries and fried snacks, which are staple for many Ramadan iftars all over the world. Of course, like you mentioned already, to eat in moderation, and this is number one. Of course, we're doing all these tips and hints, just to give you an idea. But the number one is always eat in moderation. But for sometimes it's very hard to do that, so we're just kind of, telling you which way to go. And also taking care of one's breath, just because a breath of a fasting person is most beloved to Allah, of course. But that does not justify that you don't take care of yourself. You still brush your teeth, you still use miswak, you still rinse your mouth. We don't just totally ignore that. I've seen a lot of people do that, and that's not right. So brushing, flossing before Taraweeh is advised, and of course, we come in before Taraweeh, and all those fried foods that one has eaten, they come out as, some people burp or whatever, and they come out, and this is unpleasant feeling. And everybody burps. Everybody is guilty of that. But subhanAllah, if you're not overeating, are you going to burp? Most likely not, right? It's just the overeating part that happens, that we cannot control it. And that brings unpleasant feeling in the masjid during the Taraweeh, where you are supposed to be fully energized and performing ibadah. So this is food-wise. Now, what happens if you want to go for Tarawih? Now we're full, right? We have our hour and a half or so. Usually, scientifically speaking, when one eats food, it takes 20 minutes for the brain to get the message that you're full. So we can overeat very easily before the brain gets the message that, stop, enough, kaput, stop eating. At that moment, when we get full, what do? We get kind of lazy, right? We kind of sit back. Oh man, I've just eaten too much. Now I have to go for Taraweeh. It's like, so in order to avoid that, of course, if we cannot, then get up before Taraweeh, take a walk around the block, right? Go down the street before Taraweeh. Just get moving a little bit, so you will get that energy. You wake up a little bit, so then you proceed for Taraweeh prayer, and so on. What do you do when you go for Taraweeh prayer? And I'm guilty of this myself. Limit your travel for Taraweeh prayer. We found a lot of people, myself before, we want to listen to this Shaykh reciting Quran, so we will drive 45 minutes away to get to this masjid and get exhausted, kind of run against time, kind of speed a little bit to make it on time. So this is not something one should do. Praying in your own local masjid does the job, and you will save so much time. In this time you can recite Quran, and this will help. And after Taraweeh also, when you're going back home, it's very close. You can maximize that time as well.
Especially in the first maybe week or so of Ramadan as well. You're still going to be adapting to the fasting. So you're going to also wear yourself down by keep driving long distances and driving back in the first few days of Ramadan, where you're still getting accustomed to the fasting.
Yes. And after Taraweeh, because if you had a huge meal, you might be still full. But if you didn't have a huge meal, after Taraweeh, have a little snack, have some tea, stuff like that, something easy. And then proceed. No, don't forget that Ramadan doesn't mean you stay up all night. I think this is a mistake for many of us, that we decided in Ramadan to stay up very late. And even not only that we decide to stay up late, we let our children stay up late. And this is a mistake, because then the whole day, next day they're sleeping, and then Ramadan totally changed. And it should not be like that, right? So for example, why do we say this? Because then ibadat and all of these things change. You're not as energetic, and then you sleep until dhuhr, or if you're not working and so on. So all these things combined, the Ramadan loses itself. So we should
just hold you on that point. Please join us after this short break. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back. Right before the break, we'd mentioned so many various things, and one of the last things we mentioned was the fact of not going too far out of your way for going to the masjid for Taraweeh, etc. So, what other tips in this last part of the show can we give to the viewers?
One of the major things that, like I said, in a fast-paced world, we have to keep it simple. Right? Keep it simple, especially for our children. If we overwhelm them with activities during Ramadan, and we don't continue with doing those activities in the first few days in Ramadan, and we don't continue, they will get forgotten. One of the concepts that we talk about within our family is called simplicity parenting. What it means is basically simple things that you do can become history for kids. So if you do something one day, next day they want to do the same thing, even that thing was for 5 minutes. SubhanAllah, it's the same thing, ibadah. What's most beloved ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? It's the one that you do on a constant basis, even maybe little. Right? On a daily basis you do something, but it's little. Allah loves it more than something you do lots, plenty in one day, and the next day or the day after that, there's nothing of it to be seen. So in this way, I believe, that you make things simple for the children, it'll become history for them in this Ramadan and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And we noticed that with our children. You know, after Asr, we watched Ramadan, for example, for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, some of the Islamic shows on YouTube or whatever, and it become a habit for them. And they're like, Baba, we want to watch that. Mama, we want to watch that. You know, that was nice, you know, about Quran or something like that, some stories. And, you know, for them it becomes very easy, and they adapt. Kids adapt, right? And we should not get it complicated. And you know, subhanAllah, again, I know this is a concept we're talking about called simplicity parenting, but look at the scholars. What the scholars do in Ramadan? What's the major thing that, you know, you talk to students of knowledge who've studied in many places all over the world for centuries. One of the things, what do they do in Ramadan? All the durus usually stop in Ramadan, except a few, right? Because do not make it too complicated in Ramadan. Ramadan is a time of contemplation, Quran, reading, reciting, dua, ibadah. So don't have too many activities. Some people decide in Ramadan they'll have seminars, Islamic seminars, or they will have Islamic, you know, on a daily basis have like some kind of a halaqah or whatever. Ramadan is not time for that. Yeah, here and there a few minutes, I'm not saying, but we should keep it simple. Not only, like I said, for the children, also for adults. And the scholars are famous for this, subhanAllah, when it comes to for that. What about nighttime? We talked about now. So nighttime is an important part and people needs rest. So you decide to have some family time, and of course you should rest, especially in the first 20 nights. Of course, last 10 nights you should be up as much as you can, and definitely you will have lack of sleep because you're doing ibadah at night. It's very important. But in the first 20 nights, get as much rest as possible to have that energy for the last 10 nights. And we come last 10 nights, what is one of the things we should do? If we cannot do, at least have an intention for i'tikaf, if we can do. And if you cannot do i'tikaf, spend as much time as you can in the masjid for qiyamul layl, before that or after that, recite the Quran and so on. And one of the tips that we give to everybody, inshallah, and all of us and myself included, is to recite the whole Quran at least once in Ramadan, right? We know the stories from the Salaf, mashallah, that some of them used to recite Quran every 3 days in Ramadan, some of them on a daily basis, some of them on a weekly basis. I mean, we know people of now who do it 10 times in Ramadan or 7 times or whichever, right? But at least once. And for those of us whose Arabic is not first language, take a time to contemplate, because this is time not just reading Quran. For what you've read, please take a moment and listen to translation, or read the translation in your own language and get a feeling of what Allah is telling us.
I mean, that's what the scholars have said. The scholars have said it's better for you to read, for example, half of the Quran in Ramadan, but you're pondering and you're paying attention and you're thinking and trying to understand the meanings of the verses, rather than just reciting it really quickly and completing it maybe even twice.
Yeah.
And we know it's quite, many people have probably heard this, that it's very easy to finish the Quran if you just read 5 pages. With each of the 5 daily prayers, you read 5 pages of the Quran. That's around 25 pages a day. You'll find you'll easily finish the Quran by the end of Ramadan just by reading 5 pages after each prayer.
Or even like reading in the beginning of Ramadan 2 or 3 pages a prayer, you will reach, you know, let's say by 20 days, so 3 pages, 5 times 15 pages, right? You will finish 300. How many would that be? 300 pages by the 20th of Ramadan. You still have 300 pages left. But you know what? Last 10 nights, you have more time for ibadah. This is the one we need to focus on. So you can do then more in the last 10 nights. I mean, you can mix and match, see how your schedule works out and so on. And, you know, mashallah, living in a Muslim country, people know in the last 10 nights, even the workload is a bit less, is expected to little less. So it's not like you are forced to do. For example, at my work, we don't have conferences in Ramadan. We don't have huge meetings unless the necessary ones, right? The ones that are must that you have. But all of the other ones are limited, or they're not there in Ramadan. So it gives you time, right? It gives one time to focus on ibadah as well. And of course, one of the major things in Ramadan that we should be doing is to ask Allah's forgiveness, right? To ask Allah, Allahumma innaka afuwwun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni, fa'fu anna, and so on. And this is very important that Allah forgives us, because if we don't use this opportunity in Ramadan, ask Allah's forgiveness, then we are really going to be at a loss. I mean, we should focus that a lot. And then in order for us, we should also know the conditions of forgiveness. If somebody wants to repent from a sin, what are the conditions for one to ask for Allah's forgiveness? Of course, is number one, realizing one's mistake, but also not going back to that is the number one condition. And if we fulfill those, then Allah, inshallah, Allah by His grace will forgive us. And if we do not, go back to the same thing we're doing after Ramadan, then we kind of are missing the point. So we have to mentally get focused on that as well. And what about of course we talked about last 10 nights, Laylatul Qadr, searching for it, looking for it, maximizing our time. If we cannot do itikaf, some people cannot take time off work. I've asked actually Sheikh about this, and he said, if you cannot take time off work, how about you make the masjid be a base for you as well? So just from work, go to the masjid, stay there. Of course you sign up and all of this. You stay there until next morning when you have to go to work again, but come back to the masjid again. So at least you may not get reward of the whole itikaf, but at least your intention is there, and you're going to try your best, and you're going to get the reward for that. And it's a benefit for a person to do this if one can do this. And of course, by reaching the last of Ramadan, after all the effort of planning and helping others and praying and fasting and keeping good intentions, we ask Allah to accept from us. And one of the du'as that I like to make is, oh Allah, make us and me and my family to await another Ramadan, so that we have another chance, and that we not only get to be in fasting in next Ramadan, but in health, so that we are able to fast, that we're able to do ibadat and so on. And wallahi, it's a great blessing to be able to do this next year, inshallah, or the year after that, and so on. And we should be always grateful to Allah, really, for because as you know, there are some people who are not with us that were here with us last year, and Allah knows best if we're going to be around. So we always have to take the, I know it's a cliche to say, let this Ramadan be your last Ramadan, right? It's a cliche to say this, but really we should focus on that. Just like the Imam always says, not every Imam, but we always hear in the masjid, let this Salah be your last Salah, right? And sometimes it's hard to focus on that because you have so many plans to do, but this is life. This is life.
Yeah, we used to find that the Salaf and the Sahaba, they would always ask 6 months in advance before Ramadan. They would prepare for Ramadan, and they would just start making dua to Allah, oh Allah, let us see the next Ramadan.
Subhanallah.
So that is something, like you said, there's something that while if you now we're alhamdulillah here in Ramadan, is to really, like you said, try and make the most of it.
Yes.
Try and make the most of it. And like you said, we've spoken about reading the Quran. Like we mentioned, it could be a few pages after each prayer. It's really not something that's going to take a lot of our time.
Yeah.
And by doing that, we can still finish probably within a few days before the end of Ramadan. So you maybe even have time to read those few pages and try and ponder and reflect upon the verses as well, not just have to read it really fast.
Yes.
So we have you have the time to do that. You have the time, even if the person, he does decide, he has that time where he doesn't, like you said, he doesn't stay awake all night. He can pray Taraweeh, have a nap, wake up a bit early before Fajr, maybe about an hour before Fajr. He can do his Qiyam al-Layl, he can do his Tahajjud, he can do his praying in the third part of the night, and then have his suhoor, and then possibly after Fajr, have a small sleep again. So there's small things that we can do here and there that make a big difference in Ramadan.
For sure. And and the last thing that I want to say is, subhanallah, remember that by fasting Ramadan and being successful and productive in it, what's after Ramadan? It's a very joyful place, and joyful time is Eid. And we should make it a really Eid as much as we can, and spend whatever we can from our money or what our resources to make it a Eid. Because in this time and age where we are getting pulled left and right to do this celebration or that celebration, Eid is really our celebration of our fasting, celebration that Prophet ﷺ told us to do. And we should make it really special for our children. I mean, so special that the children will say to you, Baba, or they'll say, Mama. And this is like you said, 6 months before Ramadan, they're like, you know what? I'm thinking about a gift for you for Eid. Oh, Baba, what are you going to get me for Eid? Are you going to get me something like you did last year or something like that? And they remember it. And this becomes an association with them, like we said, history. It doesn't have to be a huge gift, but something significant for them in a way that they will remember. And make it a joyful Eid for them, buying new clothes for them, or giving them gifts such as with money, or making plans for Eid, getting families together, get the kids together, doing some kind of things. SubhanAllah, it makes a difference for children. And those children will remember Ramadan I remember as a child, what my grandmother, Allah yarhamha, Allah may have mercy on her, how she treated us, the grandchildren, and our parents, how they treated us for Eid. I mean, I still remember. And it leaves a soft spot in my heart and beautiful memories. And we should do the same thing for our children. And of course, before we do this, we have to think of others. Don't forget to pay your zakat al-fitr. Very important. Before at least Eid prayer and so on. And that we are celebrating Eid for ourselves, but we try to have others celebrate as well, the ones who are less fortunate than us, and distribute some sweets as well and take it to other people. And of course, as soon as you hear the call for Ramadan end, start saying takbirat and appreciating and being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Jazakallah khair for coming on. And may Allah reward you all for tuning in. And inshallah, until next week's Ramadan episode, I leave you as always with the greetings of Islam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.